We're going to rigorously analyze Leigh Hunt's classic 19th century poem, Abou Ben Adhem. But hey, we are just doing a surface-level reading here. We're undertaking a comprehensive pedagogical deconstruction. We'll be examining this masterpiece through structural, thematic, and comparative lenses, using exact visual evidence from educational guidelines to really understand how these profound literary mechanics operate.
Okay, let's dive into this meticulously designed syllabus for advanced literary comprehension. We'll cover 1. Structural anatomy, 2. Somatic recitation, 3. Defining figurative language, 4. Comparative poetics, and finally, 5. Thematic synthesis.
Section 1. Structural anatomy. Now, before we can truly appreciate the meaning of the words themselves, we've got to examine the foundational architecture they're delivered in. How does that physical framework dictate the pacing of our actual reading experience? Well, to understand this structural anatomy, we have to look at the author's original quantitative structure. Leigh Hunt actually published this poem as an unbroken, solid block of exactly 18 lines. Plus, it's written entirely in rhyme and couplets, A, A, B, B, which naturally propels you forward. Your ear desperately wants to reach that next line to resolve the rhyme, right? It generates this relentless, rolling momentum from start to finish.
But here's the catch. Modern textbook publishers deliberately fracture this unbroken momentum. They take that solid 18-line block and intentionally insert white space, adapting it into 4 artificial stanzas. Stanza 1 is lines 1 through 5, stanza 2, lines 6 through 10, stanza 3 is lines 11 through 14, and stanza 4 covers lines 15 through 18. Why do they do this? Well, a novice reader encountering a dense wall of 19th century text often just holds their breath and sprints to the finish line. The textbook acts as a silent conductor here. By chopping it up into bite-sized pieces, it manages the cognitive load, forcing your eye, and consequently your lungs, to pause and digest the imagery before rushing on.
Section 2. Somatic recitation. This physical manipulation of breath brings us seamlessly to somatic learning. This is the idea of feeling the text in your literal body to inherit the architecture of the language. Let's experience this somatic recitation by reading stanza 1, which spans lines 1 through 5 aloud deliberately. Abou Ben Adhem, may his tribe increase, awoke one night from a deep dream of peace, and saw within the moonlight in his room, making it rich and like a lily in bloom, an angel writing in a book of gold. Notice how that parenthetical intrusion right in the first line essentially breaks the fourth wall. It immediately establishes this immense reverence for Abou. Then, as we navigate the sensory environment, that colon at the end of line 5, paired with the textbook's artificial stanza break, forces us to take a physical breath exactly as the supernatural element appears. It allows the visual collision to really linger.
Moving right along to the newly created stanza 2, comprising lines 6 through 10. Exceeding peace had made Ben Adhem bold, and to the presence in the room he said, "What writest thou?" The vision raised its head, and with a look made of all sweet accord, answered, "The names of those who love the Lord." Look at the psychological flex happening here. Exceeding peace totally subverts the typical fight-or-flight response you'd expect someone to have to a celestial being. The interaction is surprisingly harmonious. It's defined by sweet accord. Yet by ending the stanza right here on the angel's revelation, the textbook curators deliberately manufacture a massive, suspenseful cliffhanger for us.
Now let's read the third stanza aloud, isolating lines 11 through 14. "And is mine one?" said Abou. "Nay, not so," replied the angel. Abou spoke more low, but cheerfully still, and said, "I pray thee then, write me as one that loves his fellow men." So the crucial takeaway here is this remarkable psychological pivot we just voiced. Abou receives definitive divine confirmation that he is not on the VIP list. I mean, for anyone else, this triggers an existential meltdown. But Abou, he absorbs this theological rejection with absolute quiet humility. The AAB rhythm remains completely unbroken, perfectly mirroring his internal serenity as he assertively declares his radical humanist values.
We conclude our recitation with stanza 4, lines 15 through 18. The angel wrote and vanished. The next night it came again with a great wakening light, and showed the names whom love of God had blessed, and lo, Ben Adhem's name led all the rest. When you physically read this aloud, you can feel your own vocal cords crescendo. You are literally forced to project more volume and energy when you hit that active, illuminating phrase, "Great Wakening Light." It perfectly reflects the climax, where his name rightfully leads the divine list.
Let's synthesize how this builds our conceptual understanding. By breaking the text into 4 distinct stanzas, the textbook essentially guides the reader through 4 discrete structural steps. We move from the profound internal calmness of the vision straight into the bold curiosity of the inquiry, navigate through the psychological humility of the pivot, and finally arrive at the earth-shattering theological consequence of the revelation.
Section 3. Defining figurative language.
Now, what's really interesting about this is how we definitively dissect the specific literary tools Hunt employs to build those narrative steps. Educational guidelines mandate that we pull back the curtain to understand the underlying linguistic machinery. So let's establish an uncompromisingly academic definition for our primary tool, imagery. Imagery is visually descriptive or figurative language utilized in poetry to evoke a somatic sensory experience within the reader's cognitive framework. This is the foundational mechanism poets use to construct vivid mental tableaus. When Hunt writes of a deep dream of peace or a great wakening light, he is utilizing pure imagery to force your brain to generate a tangible sensory reality.
Next up, let's define the simile. It's a rhetorical figure of speech explicitly comparing two distinct entities, typically utilizing the syntactic particles like or as. Hunt applies this masterfully in line 4, stating the moonlight made the room like a lily in bloom. This specific simile beautifully conveys an organic, unfolding, and delicate beauty that flawlessly matches the ethereal, silver-white purity of the moonlight itself.
When we combine this imagery and simile, we uncover a brilliant visual collision orchestrated by Hunt right in the very first stanza. Just look at this juxtaposition. On one side, we have earthly, delicate, fragile imagery, the silver moonlight and the lily in bloom. On the other side, right at the stanza's end, we get the divine and permanent, the supernatural angel, and the heavy mineral permanence of a book of gold. This stark sensory contrast visually sets up the incredible intersection of the earthly and the divine.
Section 4. Comparative poetics. Having defined these core mechanisms, we can now transition to comparative literature, analyzing how carefully defined techniques operate across entirely different contextual paradigms. A classic pedagogical connection here is to William Wordsworth's famous poem, Daffodils. Look at the vast divergence in tone and subject. Abou Ben Adhem utilizes imagery to construct a static, serene, celestial silver and white nocturnal interior. In stark contrast, Wordsworth uses imagery to evoke a kinetic, earthly, vibrant yellow, wind-blown diurnal landscape. He forces the reader to physically feel the kinetic energy of nature. On the surface, they appear to have completely different philosophical goals.
So why even connect them? To build the universal muscle of literary analysis. Despite these incredibly stark contextual differences, both poems rely on the exact same universal muscle, imagery, to elicit profound sensory resonance. It's exactly like teaching a young artist that the same primary colors used to paint a gentle, serene landscape can be mixed to paint a chaotic, raging storm. By realizing that imagery is just a universal lever a writer pulls to make you see a specific picture, you transition from being a passive consumer into an active mechanic capable of decoding absolutely any text.
Section 5. Thematic synthesis. And this brilliantly illustrates how structural precision and figurative mastery serve to elevate a core philosophical argument. Everything we have pulled apart today, the rhythmic couplets, the somatic recitation, the vivid similes, the comparative imagery, all of it is intentional engineering designed to deliver one profound truth. Hunt is basically arguing that radical humanism is inextricably linked with divine reverence. The poem executes a complete collapse of secular and sacred boundaries. Loving your community isn't just some nice, secondary earthly trait. It is fundamentally synonymous with loving the divine. Abou's unconditional love for his fellow men didn't merely qualify him for a spiritual legacy, it positioned him as the ultimate exemplar of it.
I want to leave you with a final, provocative thought regarding the reality-bending mechanics of Hunt's universe. On night 1, Abou was definitively not in the Golden Book, but after simply asserting his genuine love for humanity, his name magically led all the rest the very next night, which begs a massive question. Can human compassion actually alter an already written divine record? Does radical empathy hold the power to force a cosmic rewrite, placing the ultimate power of salvation squarely in how we treat one another? It is a phenomenal concept to wrestle with long after this explainer concludes. Keep questioning the structure of what you read, and thank you so much for joining me for this deep dive.
Abou Bin Adhem में his tribe increases. Abou Bin Adhem अल्लाह करे उसके कबीले हम ख्याल लोगों में इजाफा हो. Awoke one night from a deep dream of peace. एक रात वो अमन और सुकून के एक गहरे ख्वाब से जागे. And saw within the moonlight in his room, और अपने کمرے میں چاندنی کی روشنی میں دیکھا، میکنگ اٹ رچ اینڈ لائک اے للی ان اے بلوم، جیسے کھلے ہوئے سوسن کے پھول سے کمرہ حسین اور روشن لگ رہا تھا. این اینجل رائٹنگ ان اے بک آف گولڈ، کہ ایک فرشتہ ایک سنہری کتاب میں کچھ لکھ رہا ہے. ایکسیڈنگ پیس ہیڈ میڈ بن ایڈم بولڈ، بسیار سکون اور اطمینان نے بن ادم کو باہمت بنا دیا تھا. اینڈ ٹو دا پریزنس ان دا روم ہی سیڈ، اور کمرے میں موجود اس نورانی ہستی فرشتے سے اس نے پوچھا، وٹ رائٹسٹ دو؟ دا ویژن ریزڈ اٹس ہیڈ، تم کیا لکھ رہے ہو؟ اس نورانی صورت نے اپنا سر اٹھایا. اینڈ ود اے لک میڈ آف آل سویٹ ایکرڈ، اور نہایت شفقت اور پیار بھری نگاہ سے آنسرڈ دا نیمز آف دوز ہو لو دا لارڈ، جواب دیا ان لوگوں کے نام جو اللہ تعالیٰ سے محبت کرتے ہیں. اینڈ از مائن ون سیڈ ابو، کیا ان میں میرا نام بھی ہے؟ ابو نے کہا، نے ناٹ سو، نہیں ایسا نہیں ہے. ریپلائڈ دا اینجل، فرشتے نے جواب دیا. ابو اسپوک مور لو، ابو مزید عاجزی اور ہلکی آواز میں بولا. بٹ چیئرلی اسٹل اینڈ سیڈ، مگر پھر بھی خوشدلی کے ساتھ اور کہا، آئی پرے دی دین، میں تم سے التجا کرتا ہوں کہ رائٹ می ایز ون دیٹ لو ہز فیلو مین، میرا نام ان لوگوں میں لکھ دو جو اپنے انسانوں سے محبت کرتے ہیں. دا اینجل روٹ اینڈ وینشڈ دا نیکسٹ نائٹ، فرشتے نے لکھا اور غائب ہو گیا. اگلی رات اٹ کیم اگین ود اے گریٹ ویکننگ لائٹ، وہ دوبارہ ایک دلکش اور زبردست روشنی کے ساتھ آیا. اینڈ شوڈ دا نیمز whom love of God had blessed، اور ان لوگوں کے نام دکھائے جن پر اللہ تعالیٰ کی خاص رحمت اور برکت تھی. اینڈ لو بن ایڈمز نیم لیڈ آل دا ریسٹ، اور دیکھو بن ادم کا نام سب فہرست میں سب سے اوپر تھا.